You're listening to the Allman Report on NewsTalkSTL.
Yes. Good evening, everyone, and happy Wednesday evening to all of you. You indeed are a tourist, according to Death Cab for Cutie. Speaking of tourists, by the way, welcome to the Allman Report, News Talk STL. Jamie Allman here with you, and I sure hope they fix this drone problem before Santa Claus comes. Because here's the problem, is you can't have Santa Claus up in the sky with a bunch of other things that are the sizes of SUVs and buses or whatever they call them, what have you. And I'm just hoping that in the end, people are not going to mistake Santa Claus for a drone and shoot it down or cast suspicion upon it or whatever. I want everybody to know that the fact of the matter is there is no drone that has 8 tiny reindeer in front of it. There just is not. So that would definitely be the thing that will mark the difference between a drone and Santa, so we can tell. And also, there's no drone that has a jolly old elf riding in it because drones do not have passenger seats. So we've got that all figured out right now, but I'm just concerned. And also, there's that problem of Santa Claus and his sleigh possibly running into a drone, which, he gets high and everything else, but he's got to go low in order to get to all the chimneys and everything else. And so I'm hoping they have this whole thing fixed. I thought we were on to something with the radioactive material, and now people are saying it's all foreign government. So we're back to square one, apparently. We don't know anything about the drones. We don't know any more than we knew when they first started flying. So that's kind of weird. Anyway, happy Wednesday to all of you and yours. And by the way, just as a program note, Phil did send me the Rumble version of Portrait of a Patriot. I will be having that up on the Facebook page tonight, quite possibly after the show or what have you. But I will have it up tonight so you could enjoy it throughout the next few days and share it and things like that. It'll be on Rumble, but it'll be on this page where you're watching the Allman Report on the Radio Free Allman Facebook page and beyond. So you'll be able to see that. Then that's just a little update for you on what is going on. So what is going on Capitol Hill? Well, we had that spending bill, and it's just full of all this trash that Republicans and Democrats are stuffing into it at the last minute, presumably because, well, we can't have the government shut down. It's happening all the time around the holidays, And so they're all stuffing it full of pork and everything else, as the Uniparty always does, except this time they're being called out. Rand Paul has gone so far as to call Mike Johnson a weak man and how this is a bad day for America. And indeed it is. And people are, at least who are conservatives, are really rolling around Capitol Hill with a great load of confidence and not worrying in any way, shape, or form about calling anybody out or even remotely coming across as having to be diplomatic. You can't be diplomatic with people who are raiding the Treasury and causing even more debt. And ultimately, President Trump is going to have to kind of chime in on the matter, as he probably will. And so this thing cannot fly the way it is. And the pork barrel spending, and pork barreling is, adding that fat to make the barrel thicker and appear thicker, whatever, is as outrageous and shouldn't stand. Speaking of confidence, so Marjorie Taylor Greene, I love this because I happen to like Marjorie Taylor Greene. For a while there were people who thought she was annoying because she just kind of was mouthy, and some people said crass or whatever. I never had that problem with her. I like mouthy people sometimes. Actually, I like them all the time. I just, I happen to be mouthy myself to a certain degree. So I kind of appreciate people like Marjorie Taylor Greene, even as unrefined as she might come across as being. I don't care. Yeah, Trump had the same issue with all of these pearl clutchers who didn't think that he was up to snuff for Washington, D.C., but that's no longer the case. And so Marjorie Taylor Greene ran roughshod over this dude named Alex Lawson. He's the executive director of this left-wing group called Social Security Works. And so they're all the ones who create the fear-mongering over Republicans getting rid of Social Security, which will never happen, and all that kind of stuff. And so what happens is they come to the Capitol and they kind of pretend that they're reporters. And so they have cameras with them and they have microphones with them, but they're not really reporting on anything. They're actually just simply compiling video and audio for their scaremongering ads that they'll be putting out over the next year or so. And so it's not really reporting. And Marjorie Taylor Greene is like, dude, you're not really a reporter, so go away. And it really worked out well for Common Sense America when Marjorie Taylor Greene was approached by Alex Lawson.
You were 100% funded by Democrats. You donate to Democrats. You're out here asking bullshit questions.
What is the bullshit question?
All of your questions.
This is a mailing.
She's like, you're 100% funded by the Democrat Party and the left wing, and your BS questions are nonsense. And he's like, well, what do you mean?
This is Donald
President
Trump.
We all campaign on protecting seniors' Social Security.
And she points out, and sorry, some of this is a little muddy, but she says Donald Trump campaigned on preserving Social Security. There was never any threat to seniors whatsoever. And so the left wing continues to promote this idea. And then you might disagree with President Trump on that even. I don't know. Some of you conservatives out there are not big fans of this whole program, and I get it. And, I mean, I think ultimately it would be better, in my opinion, if people were able to hold on to their own money and invest it on their own, and especially the younger people who are going to be spending the next 40 years working and then expecting Social Security to be there, even though that's what they're doing is spending Social Security money. For instance, that spending package that is so controversial right now is actually spending Social Security money. So it's spending the money that has already been taken out of the checks of people who are like 35 and 40 years old. So that's how it works with Social Security. It becomes a slush fund. And so it would be better if just stop taking Social Security out of my check, right? And let me invest it. Let me do whatever I want to do with it instead of taking it and holding it for me. You know what I mean? I mean, it just is ridiculous on that level. And Ethan, wouldn't that be great if listen, you might never see a Social Security check as a young man. Wouldn't it be better if they just didn't take it out of your check and allow Ethan Valencia to just trust him to decide what he wants to do with his money?
I'd rather have it now. Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, money now is worth more to me than money less, especially with the inflation and all that.
Yeah. And I mean, right now, I think that people who are at a certain age are certainly deserving of, so they paid into the Social Security system. It's not a welfare system by any stretch, even though I believe it's a little more than the dollar you put in, but still, I'm not wanting to take it away from people who currently are in line to get it. But if you want to start at some certain point, it'd be nice if they just allowed people to keep the money instead of taking it out of their check. That's paternalism run amok. And plus, they take it out of the check and they just spend it like they're doing on Capitol Hill right now in the spending bill. Anyway, back to Marjorie Taylor Greene. She said, no, we spent all this time, President Trump did, campaigning on preserving Social Security. So your crap about how seniors are threatened by Trump and me is ridiculous.
Yeah, this is your political agenda. You know what? We don't care.
She takes his paper that he is holding in his hand. It's just downloaded and just throws it in the hallway. I love that. That's good.
That's Donald Trump's mailing.
No, you are one. You're not media.
That's Donald Trump's mailing.
No, this right here is for Democrat ads to attack Republicans.
So it's
And
really simple.
no, that's what your
It's really
agenda
simple.
is.
Yeah,
No,
you're collecting video for Democrat ads to attack Republicans. That's what you're doing. You're just out here collecting sound bites so the Democrat Party can use them in the midterms and all that other mother jazz.
It's not simple.
pledge
No, you're a
to
liar.
take Social Security and
here's-
Medicare cuts
you're-
off the
you
table.
and this guy right here, look, you're lying.
What am I
no,
lying
you're lying
about?
because
I'm
President
asking
Trump,
you
President
to
Trump
take a
campaigned-
pledge.
I don't need to take a pledge because we've already done that all year long. And guess what? The sad story for you is the American people elected Trump, his agenda, and Republicans to lead the country because you guys suck so bad.
So
That was great. And what he wanted her to do, and these guys just show up out of nowhere demanding people take pledges. Would you pledge to preserve Social Security and Medicare? It's like, I don't need to pledge. My actions are speaking just as loud as my words. I don't need to give you some kind of pledge, dude. And I don't know who this guy, but this is what they do. They go out and demand answers and demand prompt pledges and all that. Would you sign this pledge to preserve Medicare? It's like, I don't need to do that. And this kind of passive aggressive type of stuff is finally getting the treatment it deserves by none other than Marjorie Taylor Greene, who I, again, really like. She is, remember back in the day, by the way, that they thought that Marjorie Taylor Greene was on the way out and fell out of favor with the Republican Party. And that was all obviously designed as propaganda by the rhinos and the Uniparty and everything else, because they wanted to kind of create this idea, this illusion that somehow Marjorie Taylor Greene was no longer in favor, blah, blah, blah. And it's ridiculous. And then, of course, then she supported McCarthy, and there are people going, trying to run her out there. And so her survival rate so far has been great. Of course, she's a congresswoman from Georgia, and her district likes her. And that's just all how it goes. I mean, her district does, in fact, like her, and that's how it's been going for her. And I'm glad to see her up there. I think her in Congress, Rand Paul in the Senate, and, of course, other people are really coming out very, very strong and supporting Donald Trump's agenda and will. We've got the Hegseth Senate confirmation hearings that have been set for the early part of January. And that'll be good as well. And at this point, the people, like, for instance, I'll digress a little bit because I want to talk about this. Like, for instance, all these questions about RFK Jr.'s positions on abortion. And maybe he had some positions that were a little more liberal than some conservatives wanted. But the fact is, he said, I'm going to promote President Trump's life agenda. That's going to be my job as a cabinet member. And then somebody else had some bill or something they liked or proposed, and they're going to kind of question him on that. It's like, enough already. I mean, I'm not saying that these people are beyond scrutiny. I get the process, but nitpicking about things, and you might think that, well, abortion isn't nitpicking, and I understand that fully. But once you understand, once somebody says, I am committed to Donald Trump's agenda, that should be enough. It doesn't matter what your past views were or what have you. If you commit while you're under oath in a Senate judiciary hearing or whatever it happens to be, then that should be enough. That's it. And, of course, if RFK Jr. somehow strays, the president can always fire a cabinet member. It doesn't happen all the time, but it can happen, and it has before. So we've gone through Secretary of States and defense secretaries and things like that. And so, let's get the show on the road here. We got to make sure that by Inauguration Day, President Trump is hitting the ground running with his cabinet, the cabinet that he wants. And so I think just the fact that people need to keep fighting and just kind of calling bull crap on some of these nitpicky, pearl-clutching lawmakers would be a good idea. All right, people, let me tell you something. Have some of your Christmas lights already went out on the tree or outside or whatever? You need another extension cord or something like that? Don't hassle with Home Depot. Go to Schneider's True Value Hardware. TrueValue.com/Schneiders. And, of course, they're in Old Town St. Peter's. Have been there for more than 100 years. Jerry and Charlie are there to help you with all of your little projects. I got to go by there because I got to fix a drain. I got to fix some rain drain, gutter, otherwise known as. Listen to me. I couldn't even come up with the word gutter. Can you believe that? But I think rain drain isn't bad. Ethan, is rain drain actually sounds better.
That's how you know these aren't scripted, people.
Yeah.
We got the rain drain.
It doesn't sound as good like when you want to use a euphemism like your mind is in the gutter. That's better than your mind is in the rain drain. But still, for the purpose of describing a house, like a rain drain is a much better description of what that thing is. But anyway, something broke and it's draining into some part of my foundation, and then it's leaking into the basement. So I got to fix this. Drain. I'm going to do it myself with a little bit of piping and all that kind of stuff. I'm going to go to Schneider's True Value Hardware for that because actually Jerry and Charlie can show me a little bit about what I need to do and how I need to do it. I can bring pictures of what I'm doing, and they can look at it and say, yeah, you need this. It looks like you need this. It looks like you need that. And so that's how it's going to work. It's Schneider's True Value Hardware. Doesn't matter what you need. No job too big or too small for them to help you with, and all the tools that you possibly need, and everything, as they used to say in the old days, from scoop to nuts, right? That's the old school True Value Hardware, Schneider's True Value Hardware in Old Town St. Peter's. Coming up, your friend and mine, the great Rick Pogue. This is the Allman Report on News Talk STL.
You're listening to the Allman Report on News Talk STL.
Good evening, everyone, and happy Wednesday to all of you. And this is the Allman Report on News Talk STL. One of my favorite times of the week, as always, with my buddy Rick Pogue. And he's always up to something, it seems. He's always, one time we were out, he's like, just got back from testing out pizza sauces. He's always out and about, this guy. Can't stop Rick Pogue from progressing everywhere. And this time now, he decided to take we don't call it the monster truck, though, right? It's not really a monster truck.
It's super truck.
Super truck.
Yeah. It's an F650 pickup truck. And if you know what an F350 is, it's about twice that size.
And it has steps on it so you can get up in it.
Yeah.
And
I get a lot of looks.
And then you said, what are the gas tank amounts again?
Yeah, it'll hold 150 gallons of gas. It's basically a tractor trailer with a pickup truck bed on it. The right tank's 70 gallons, the left tank's 80 gallons.
Wow, you could drive to the moon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In Biden's America, you can go about 20 miles.
Right, exactly. Yeah, no doubt. So, buddy, I'm telling you, we just got word about this spending bill, to fund the government. This happens every year. These guys, I don't know why they have to wait around for so long. It's always around Christmas time. A government shutdown is threatened. I mean, aren't we tired of just the way the uniparty works on this matter? It's just crazy.
Yes, we're very tired. And I heard it this morning. I heard about this morning on the way into work, and I also heard Eric Burleson just going crazy on News Talk this morning. It's insane. I mean, what is it? It's not just an extension. They grew it. They had $200 billion. It's nice to have a majority in the House, Jamie, but you know as well as I do, what do we have? 220 seats.
Yeah.
All it takes is a few, as Russ called them, linguini spine people.
Yeah.
To mess everything up.
Yeah.
And I understand the speaker's point of view, where he's just trying to get to January 1st, which is really January 20th, is what he's thinking of. But still, here we go. Add more money,
Yeah.
Going further in debt. I cannot wait for Doge to get in there and start hacking. I think that's going to be one of the biggest fights we've ever seen.
Yeah. Well, because, we know what the mindset is. It's the mindset of some normal, average, everyday humans who, at the last minute, they're like, well, while we're spending money, why not just buy this and buy that? And we might as well. What's another million? That's how they always act until we add, another $4 billion or whatever to the budget with all these pet projects and all these pork barrel projects. And so these guys are doing what maybe a normal greedy person might do in the very end. But that's not what we elect them to go to Washington to do, is be greedy. We elect them to take a chill pill on the spending and to rein in the size and scope of federal government.
Yes, absolutely. It's just so frustrating. Here we are. We've got both houses and the White House. I feel like we're going to get more out of the Senate than anything else, because we actually have firm control there, as long as we get the two, was it Gillibrand and what's the other one? As long as we get those two ladies on board. But, even without them, I think the Senate's going to have to be the one that steps in and brings more common sense in, because I don't know that the Republicans in the House will unite enough. I just don't know.
Yeah, well, Rand Paul has already taken the unusual step. I mean, generally, senators don't normally opine about the House. There's always been this little, decorum thing or whatever it happens to be. But I'm glad they're kind of throwing that out. And Rand Paul specifically said that Mike Johnson's weak and that it's a bad day for America. So I really think on a number of different levels, as far as the attitudes of some of our common sense conservatives up there on Capitol Hill, they're no longer constrained by all this normal, well, harump, yes, my colleague from across the aisle. It's like, no, if you're doing something bad, they're going to call each other out. It's great.
Yeah. And I understand the speakers, I get he's on a wire doing a balancing act. I get all that. But for crying out loud, Jamie, had a landslide victory. The whole country's behind us. They've got this mandate, and the first thing out of the box they do is lay down for them.
Yeah.
Instead of going, nope, we're not doing it. Oh, we're going to shut something down. Okay. We're not doing it.
Yeah.
It's just disappointing. It's disappointing. And if this continues after January 20th, we'll get our butts kicked again in 2 years.
No doubt about it. And that's the problem is these guys, need to be basically on alert that if you're a Republican and you're on board with this spending package, and here's what happens though, Rick, and we know this all the time, is that there will be people who will state their opposition to the pork barrel and all the add-ons into the budget and then wind up voting for the budget because what's going to happen is, well, we had to keep the government open. So that's been the excuse that they've used for decades now. So these people who will pipe in, and I'm not saying Congressman Burleson, because I know he will stick with his plan. But some of these other guys who come out and say, well, we don't like this, we don't like that, but it's getting to the end here and we have to keep the government open or we're going to have to close the World War II memorial, that kind of thing.
Yeah, right. I remember when Obama put gates up around that. Remember that?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Those veterans up there in wheelchairs, and he was locking them out. That was insane.
Yeah.
It's just. I mean, I know you're as frustrated as I am, but for crying in a well bucket, I mean, you have a victory. If the Democrats had a victory like ours now, do you think they'd be trying to lay down for us or compromising, or would they run over us and put bus tracks all over us?
Yeah.
It's time for us to assert ourselves. We have the American people behind us.
Yeah. That is funny when you mention the gates around the World War II memorial. Isn't it funny how the first thing that they close when there's a government shutdown or the threat of one, the first thing they threaten to close or they close is a World War II memorial. They don't just take away the SUVs of the Commerce Secretary or what have you. They go right for the war memorial. I think those days are kind of gone. I think Americans are kind of onto that now. Used to be like in the old days when there was the threat, Republicans wanted a income tax reduction or whatever. There'd be Jay Nixon at a school gymnasium saying, well, if you do that, we're going to have to cut the budgets of our public schools. It's like, no, you actually don't. You don't have to start there. It's not like when you and I have budgetary problems, our first item of business is not to just simply starve our children.
Right.
It's to make other cuts in what we're doing.
Well, we know fear, intimidation, shaming, that is their weapon of choice now. And when Obama did that, remember, they always blame Republicans for government shutdown.
Yeah.
So when that happened, the optics were supposed to be Republicans shut this thing down. It's their fault. The World War II memorial's closed, not ours.
Yeah. Right.
And, I'm hoping, like you said, I hope enough people are waking from their slumber and going, no.
Yeah.
We know what's going on now. I think that election showed us that. I really do.
Well, later on in the show, you talk about awakening from your slumber. This was something that I was covering for a long time in the run-up to the election as I was trying to bolster the case for my confidence in Trump's reelection. And it was anecdotal almost every day because almost every day there was an anecdote that would lead me to believe that normal, average, everyday Americans, maybe who weren't always involved in politics, certainly weren't always Republican, were going to go for Donald Trump. And it's happening in Chicago, where there is a full-scale revolt among the black citizenry in urban Chicago against the sanctuary city status and the continued funding of illegal aliens. So I think on down the line, we have so many more people who are on this train. It's not a Republican train. It's a Trump train. That's what we have to really ultimately realize is that this agenda is a Trump agenda. It's not necessarily a Republican agenda. I'm not trying to insult Republicans. I'm just trying to say that it's a new era with a whole new group of people involved in this coalition.
It is. It is. Trump, we all know Trump's a populist. Okay. Yeah. Well, but he's the populist we need right now because both parties are culpable. The Republicans are just not as bad as the Democrats, but look at the last 20 years. They're spendaholics too.
Yeah.
And they do stupid things and they go along with stuff and they need to grow a spine. I'll be eternally grateful to my Black American brothers and sisters because I firmly believe they were the nail in the coffin for this election. I really do. I mean, I think, what did he get? He got 16% of the black vote in total. And I think black men went almost 30%.
Yeah.
That made the difference. It didn't matter how many illegals voted. It didn't matter how many valid states. They came through for us, and I'm very, very grateful for that. And I'm glad people are waking up.
And Hispanics, and of course those and those suburban women that everybody said were a problem for Trump. I told people that's not true. I have suburban women, a majority of them. A majority of the people who listen to my show are suburban women. So I know that, and it was so funny because in the run up to the election, I said, here's the thing. We're going to wind up winning this without some Republicans. And again, I'm not trying to gratuitously bash
Republicans. You said
Republicans.
that for a long time.
Yeah, I'm just going to say we're going to probably win this. We're going to probably get to the point where we don't need Nikki Haley supporters. I mean, I respect them, whatever, but we're not going to. If they're going to sit there and clutch their pearls on election day, the chances are pretty good. It's not going to matter.
Right. And you were dead on. You were right.
Yeah.
That's exactly what happened.
You could sense it. You could sense it in all the things that you do out in the real world. I mean, that's what we saw.
Jamie, I swear to you, I don't think I saw 2 Biden signs or Harris signs in a yard. I think I saw one. One is all I remember seeing. They were, in addition to all the people that finally came out, a lot of Democrats sat at home in frustration.
Yeah.
But to your point, I think a lot of Democrats voted for Donald Trump, even if they lied to their friends about it.
Yeah.
Because it's time. We've reached critical mass. If she would have won this election, that we say every election is the most important one. This one was the most important one. And I don't know that there's a recovery if we didn't win this. We were able to stave off the insanity for another 2 years for sure, hopefully 4 years. If the Republicans take the initiative and do what the American people ask them to do, if they don't, it's going to swing back left. That's the last thing we want.
Well, and in the run up to the election, it was interesting how many of these liberal journalists, Matt Taibbi and Glenn Greenwald and some of these other individuals were really leaning towards Donald Trump. And the indication from that was that there were a lot of Democrats, and you rightly point out, and astutely so, that Democrats probably did vote for Trump because some of them were like, all right, the only way we're going to kill off the left-wing dominance of the Democrat Party is by defeating it this time around. We could probably live with Donald Trump for 4 years and maybe even Vance for another 4 years or what have you, so that we could actually rebuild the party into something that is reflective of maybe the old-school Democrat Party. I happen to think at some point, I don't think there's much hope for that party at this point. And I'm not quite sure I care, but why try to rebuild the Democrat Party when you've got a now Trump-led Republican Party that basically is enveloping many Democrat ideas? I'm talking about old school conservative Democrat ideas, the party of the working man, that kind of thing.
Yeah, totally agree. Democrat Party is in shambles, and you've even got diehards like Carville, who they view as a genius.
Yeah.
Because of the Clinton campaign. He's out there saying we have to start over. There's a lot of them saying we have to start over. Well, they did it to themselves by catering to the less than 1% crazy people out there and making that their platform.
Yeah.
They dug their own hole, and I'm thankful they did.
Yeah, and then Carville says we have to start over, and then immediately insults 23-year-olds who work for the Democrats. So I don't know what you're gonna start over with, dude. Because if they start out with you and Hillary and Obama, it's just going to be more of the same. Even though Obama looks like Ronald Reagan compared to some of these Democrats now.
And speaking of Obama, Jamie, he I don't know that he's the leader anymore.
No,
he really screwed the pooch there when he he thought he could just come in there and get these black men to smack him across the face, go, what are you doing? Vote Democrat. All he did was anger them. I think all he did was piss them off.
Man,
I really do. He messed up badly. He's got a lot of blame on his shoulders for this loss.
I remember when he did that, and then I had you went to some of these aggregates and you saw TikTok video after TikTok video, these black dudes. I couldn't play half of it on the air because it was so full of just like disdain and cuss words for. I mean, it was amazing how many black dudes came out and were just in full on revolt.
Yeah. I mean, he insulted their intelligence.
Yeah.
And, and he patronizes them and just treats them like children. And that's, they're done. They're done with that crap.
Right on.
This has been going on for decades. So.
Well, so what? I know it'll be Christmas, so we won't be on. But what is a Rick Pogue family Christmas like?
This year it's going to be at my parents live next door conveniently, so we're going to have my parents are going to host it. I'm going to make the bird.
Nice. I
always make the bird now. I took that over from my dad, and we're going to have pretty much everybody over. I think we'll have about 15, all my kids, and
nice.
And I've got another grandbaby on the way now. I'm very thankful for that.
All right.
Yeah, so be grandbaby number 3. But yeah, it's gonna be a fun time. And by the way, I just left Johnny's Hideout an hour ago.
Yeah.
Wow. So we have a new GM there, Eric Pierce. He is a rock star.
Yeah.
Our burger, Jamie. He's a burger specialist, but he's a food specialist. But our burger, I've never had a better burger, and I'm not saying that because I own the place. I just had the pub burger there, and best. I've never had a better one anywhere. And the chili. Oh, the chili. Ooh.
Oh, I got to get down there and check that part of it out because I love a great burger. And
well, tomorrow night's a Christmas party, Tim Jones' Christmas party.
Oh, it is?
Yeah. Can you come? I'll be there.
Yeah, I think I can. Yeah, I think you can pop by there. Sure, of course.
Yeah, if you can, please do.
The Tim Jones Christmas party.
Well, I'm sorry. Yeah, well, yeah, he does a Christmas party there every year.
Oh no, he sent me an invite. That's right. Yeah, I don't know what I'm thinking. I've had so much stuff going on. I can't hardly keep my mind straight. So yeah,
I know. Bob Onder's coming, Representative Onder.
Yeah,
so, Congressman Onder, I should say.
All right. Well, that's good, man. I'll have to pop down there and say hey. I'd
love to host you, brother.
Yeah, Johnny's Hideout is great, people. And when you look at especially during the holidays, and keep in mind, okay, you always get this. I always feel like I'm lecturing people, but I'm really not. So Christmas Day is the beginning of Christmas. It's not the end of Christmas. So don't be throwing. Well, I don't need to tell our people this, but you see all these Christmas trees in the median. Like on the 26th. It's like no Christmas, and it's not just an excuse for me to leave up because I'm too lazy to take my Christmas decorations down. No, you wait till Epiphany, January 6th. So the holidays are up through Epiphany on January 6th. So you have from Christmas Day and that time off, hopefully you're taking maybe after Christmas to get down to Johnny's Hideout, hang out down there, check it out. Check out the coldest beer you're going to find anywhere and the great staff and those burgers. And Rick's there most of the time and the great bands. And, of course, they've got the football, so the bowl games, all that kind of stuff are on. So, yeah, awesome, dude.
40 televisions. We got all the NFL games. We do all the fights. We are the premier sports bar.
Yes, right. High Ridge. And you're like, High Ridge? That seems far away. It's like, no, 270 and Gravois. And the way I love our highway system here in the St. Louis area anyway, because 270 is a genius move on the part of everybody, and you just can get anywhere from 270.
It's 25 minutes from everywhere, pretty much.
Yeah, I mean it's great. So even from Illinois, you just come across and you're there as well. So Rick, I'll see you tomorrow then. That sounds good, man. Thanks for reminding me. I almost freaking forgot.
You bet. No, I look forward to it, brother. Thank you.
I've been doing a lot of radio out of town and some syndicated radio and this and that. So I've just been, I can't keep my mind straight. So last night I was on in Phoenix, and so I'm just kind of trying to keep it all together here.
Well, we got to put an event together soon and get that Johnny's Hideout party bus out because you finally saw it.
I did.
And it's a blast.
I did. So we were out in Clayton and we were having a little fun there. And where were we before? Were we somewhere? Oh, we were at the party here at News Talk. See?
Yes.
And then they went into Clayton. I met them over there. And then they drove me home in the party bus so that they could see all of my Christmas decorations. And then Rick and the gang.
sure your neighbors love that. We have speakers on the outside. It's all
I know.
lit up.
And you guys, and
They enjoy that.
and Rick, and wait, was it Eric or who was it with you?
It was Jake.
Oh, Jake. That's right,
I.
Jake. Yeah. So
Yep.
Jake and Rick laid in the manger. That's not and keep in mind, that's not sacrilege because, as we all know, baby Jesus doesn't come until Christmas. That's why there's no plastic lighted baby Jesus in my manger, because that's when you put it in there on Christmas Eve. Probably you can get away with it. So they weren't like laying on baby Jesus. They were laying in the manger, simulating the birth of Christ, which was a very interesting simulation.
What a great photo that was. By the way, your decorations look phenomenal.
Thanks, brother. So, it's taken me a long time. Hey, listen, I've got it down to a science. And folks, I'll put some pictures up on the Facebook page so you can see it. I've got it down to a science now. And, basically what happened is, because I've got every extension cord known to man, right? But for a while there, I was like really sweating. This was like 10 years ago, I was really sweating trying to get all these things all together. Instead, I said, well, why don't I just put them all out? And then I'll make the connections after I put everything where I want it. I don't know why I didn't think of that before, but it's taken me half the time once I figured that part of it out.
Well, it looks great, buddy.
All right, man. I appreciate that. Thank you so much. And you look great in that super truck, brother.
Well, thank you, man. I'll send you a picture if you want to post it.
Yeah, we will. We'll put it in. Well, people will be able to see it. All right, Rick, I appreciate you. And let us know how to wear your T-shirt so we can, if people need some last minute, can they get them some?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Vision Marketing and Promo on 3734 Elm Street in St. Charles. Yeah. 636-400-1500. So anything you can put your logo on, they do custom shirts. They do all kinds of stuff. And
can you still get the You Miss shirts there or not?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So if you want a stocking stuffer for your liberal relative or maybe
be quick on the You Miss shirts, though, because we only got a week.
I know. Yeah, I know. You got to set that up. So, all right. Well, thanks for the reminder on that. And I will see you tomorrow and appreciate you. Love you as always, brother.
Thank you, brother. Love you, too. I'll see you tomorrow.
All right. That is the great Rick Pogue. That was funny seeing them in the it was my, hey, lay down in the manger. So, have a little fun. It's the plastic lighted Christmas. I'm going to put this memory, by the way, Ethan, I don't know whether you can flag this or not because I got to get it to Joey B. But I'm going to do a Christmas memory that will play on the Christmas show. And I'm going to do it right now.
Perfect.
Is that okay?
Oh, yeah.
Can you edit that out? And not edit it out of the show, but then edit it out and send it to Joey?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Nothing like talking about stuff on the air that we ought to be talking about after the air. So you've heard about my Christmas decorations, and I have every blow mold plastic lighted Santa ever made. My crowning achievement, of course, was getting the Santa with the reindeer that I could prop up on my roof, which is what exactly I did. That was my big crowning achievement a while back. Of course, the other crowning achievement was making sure that I also had the entirety of the manger scene. I'm talking about the 3 plastic lighted kings, Mary and Joseph, and of course the shepherd, and I have a donkey, all those things, a lamb, plastic lighted lamb. Of course, I have a plastic lighted angel that I have on the tree, and then a plastic lighted baby Jesus. I have a plastic lighted snowman set, and of course, one of the snowmen only has one eye. He was my first plastic lighted thing, and I love him. And he has one eye. He's my one-eyed snowman. I have the choir boys with the Noel. I have a lighted peacock that for some reason I picked up and thought that would be a groovy idea. And I have these old school 1960s copper deer that I light up in front of this tree. I have these separate little compartments for all my stuff. And people say, well, why did you do this? So how did you become, Clark Griswold or whatever? But it's really a tale that I really remember so well. So when I was growing up, my parents really just threw a couple of big bulb light strings on the on the trees outside, and that was pretty much it. But we would go every Christmas Eve to my grandmother's house in Overland. Overland is a great place, and for some reason in North County and that area, the plastic lighted lawn ornaments were like a big deal. And so when I was a kid, it was the first time I ever saw plastic lighted ornaments because where I lived in U City, nobody had them on their lawns. I guess everybody was too hoity-toity or whatever, but nobody had them on their lawns. But once we got into that area of Overland, everybody had them. And so I would look out the window of the car and see these plastic lighted snowmen and plastic lighted Santas and plastic lighted manger scenes, and of course the rooftop plastic lighted Santa. And I said as early as like 8 years old, I said, someday that is going to be at my house. Those are going to be at my house. And so going back 30 years, I started to collect these plastic lighted Santas because that was so meaningful to me, because that was the true time that I felt the true spirit, glow, warmth of Christmas, was when I was able to kind of take in those lights from the passenger seat of my parents' car on my way to my beautiful, amazing Grandma Ida's house and seeing all my cousins and everything else. So that's why I do it. Not for any opulence, not for anything like that. I just do it because that truly means so much to me, to kind of bring in the glow and the tingling feeling of Christmas as we celebrate the true meaning of Christmas, which is, of course, the birth of our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. This is the Allman Report on NewsTalkSTL.
You're listening to the Allman Report on NewsTalkSTL.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, coming up, you are going to love this. if you can imagine Canada becoming conservative, well, there's a good chance that happening. You have to hear this potential new leader of Canada talking the way he's talking. It's a way a Canadian leader has never talked before, at least we can remember. That's all coming up here on the Allman Report on News Talk STL.
You're listening to the Allman Report on NewsTalkSTL.
Yes, you are, people. This is the Allman Report on NewsTalkSTL. Jamie Allman here, pleased and privileged to be with you. And, I've talked to Jim Carafano about this quite a bit. And that is the common sense conservatism that not only swept the nation, but seems to also be sweeping the world. I've talked to Jim Carafano about the conservative political action conference they held in Budapest, Hungary. And we have seen that sea change in Argentina as well. By the way, Argentina's new president has been invited to the inauguration. That's how far the Trump effect has reached all seemingly across the world. We have Macron in France, who otherwise, and although Macron is a little bit desperate right now because he's afraid of losing his leadership position, so of course he kissed up a little bit to Donald J. Trump and invited President Trump to the reopening of Notre Dame. But that's an indication that the world is starting to soften quite a bit to this idea that there is a different way. Germany is not far behind. Angela Merkel, who is the German version of Hillary Clinton, is still very, very anti-Trumpy and all this kind of stuff. But Germans are getting sick of her, and they're really getting tired of the unfettered migration that is actually destroying their country. And, when people say poisoning the blood, whatever, that's one thing. And it's not just the Muslim thing. It's the reality that we have a lot of situations where people are starting to realize nationalism is not a bad thing. And we're seeing a little bit of it. I mean, we've seen what's happened to Scotland and Ireland. Oh, my Lord. The Israelis finally had to close their embassy in Ireland because of the anti-Semitism over there. So it's really gotten bad in those countries. I'm not quite sure they're ever going to recover from that. But there are other countries that are. And we might even be seeing, by the time all is said and done, everybody getting out of the Paris Accord, which is calling for this green revolution that China isn't participating in. It's costing jobs all across the world. But back to the nationalism part of this. This is important. And this has been something that has been ongoing for the last 25 years or so. And it's not just with the influx of people who are changing the makeup of a country, but Germany, for instance, in Germany, and France as well, of course, nationalism really took on a really bad name post-World War II, and you can understand why. And so Germans are still really pretty jumpy about this idea of being nationalistic because it's so linked to the Third Reich and the days that were not so great for Germany. And, of course, you go back to France and those days of Mussolini, Italy, Mussolini, and France with Franco. These memories are not great. And so the nationalism is a little bit harder to come by in some of these countries, and they're a little gun-shy about it. Italy, not so much. Italy still maintains a real strong cultural influence, although everybody in these countries, which were once dominated by Catholics, they're stopped going to church. And so Germany and its religious culture is hugely watered down. France the same way, which is why I'm so happy to see Notre Dame opening as a Catholic church again. And Italy, Rome is beautiful. Everything is still beautiful. They're holding on to other things, but the church going has been vastly reduced. But nationalism now has a better name around the world. And Canadians now are starting to pick up on this. So you saw the sudden turn, and now we know why Pierre Trudeau went down to Mar-a-Lago, one of the reasons, and why he started talking so tough about the tariff thing and why he was kind of being very aggressive is because he knew that there was a creeping in of a Trumpian philosophy. And so he had to kind of double down while at the same time sucking up to Trump, trying to reach that end, but then went on to sit before a microphone and harass Americans for voting Trump in and all this other stuff. So Trudeau might be on the way out, and there is a strong Canadian Prime Minister candidate in Pierre Poilievre. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. I probably am not. Pierre Poilievre. So he gives this speech, and it is great to behold. It's almost like when Moroni there in Italy gave her speech and was quoting Chesterton and all this kind of stuff, the traditional conservative philosophies. It was pretty amazing. But it's incredible to believe or think that Canada could actually be catching that really great little vibe known as common sense conservatism. So I'm going to play you a great deal of this speech by this conservative prime minister candidate who has a really super good chance of becoming the next prime minister of Canada.
I rise today flabbergasted by the news that has just been made public. The government has finally revealed its true deficit number. Remember, this finance minister, this outgoing and now former finance minister, told the world that she was putting in place guardrails to limit the damage that her deficits could do. Her deficit plan was $40 billion, a mind-bogglingly large number that was already contributing to rekindling inflation again. This $40 billion was too big. It was out of control as it was. But at least to her credit, she said no more than that. And she decided she would have a guardrail. We know a guardrail is meant to stop vehicles from flying off cliffs. Well, as she was trying throughout the year to avoid going off the cliff, there were two people on the bus who had other ideas. The Prime Minister and carbon tax Carney. And the two of them went to the front of the bus, they grabbed the wheel, they pulled it sharply to the left.
So he's not only talking also, and I don't mean to interrupt, I know you can hear him, and I'm not trying to translate all this for you, but he mentioned the carbon tax thing. That really is amazing that you have a Canadian official who could be prime minister trashing this green revolution stuff, this nonsense that Pierre Trudeau has been pushing. So not only are they talking about fiscal conservatism, but they're also talking about doing away with this focus on the green revolution. So Pierre Trudeau is kind of like the Gavin Newsom of Canada. Gavin Newsom's doing the same exact thing. I don't know what it is about these young fops, but, these guys are probably on the way out.
Smashing into that guardrail, and she tried to resist. So they pulled even further to the left, and they stepped on the gas. The bus flew off the cliff, and now Canadians are at the bottom of the ravine in a big pile of debt. Yeah. But instead of taking responsibility, the Prime Minister told her that she should take all the blame. Oh. That when the ambulances and the police cruisers arrived, and the fire department, that she take the blame for running the bus off the cliff, and that carbon tax Carney and the Prime Minister could innocently sit back, and that the Prime Minister could then put carbon tax Carney in charge of driving the next bus. The good old boys in the back room would protect themselves and make the finance minister, the then finance minister, take all the blame. Reminds you of the way they treated the former Attorney General, a brilliant and brave First Nations woman who refused to cow kowtow to corruption. It reminds us of the way they treated Jane Philpott and so many other brave women who have dared question this self-described feminist prime minister. Some feminist indeed, throwing the bus off the cliff and throwing women under the bus.
Wow.
That is his real record. That his real record on finance, Mr. Speaker, is yet another $62 billion deficit. For context, outside of this government, there is no government in the history of Canada that has ever run a $62 billion deficit. Not even in the 90s when the Wall Street Journal said that we were a third world basket case. Not even during the massive global economic crisis did the deficit come anywhere close to that. And here we are, with the global economy growing, with the American economy booming in stable times. This deficit is 100% at the feet of this irresponsible prime minister and his personal economic advisor, Carbon Tax Carney.
That's right.
Now, Carney says he doesn't even want the job of finance minister. He doesn't even want to try and drive the crashed out bus after he helped run it off the cliff. And they couldn't find anyone all day. In fact, no one will appear today even to defend this incredible disaster of a budget. Look at the concept.
So you look at what's happening here. I want to let him speak a little bit because I think it's important. This came out of nowhere to a lot of us. We're thinking, well, golly, how did that all of a sudden happen? Well, similarly, the Canadian media is not unlike the American media. They will prop people up and hold people up and apologize for people and defend people and ignore people, just like the Canadian media was doing. So they would only play the sound bites from Pierre Trudeau. They would prop up this facade of success and everything else while ignoring all of the regular people who were not looking at whatever Trudeau was doing as being a successful pursuit. And so that's why you and me, now some of you might be, focused on the Canadian situation and none of this was a surprise to you. But for a lot of us, at least me, this came out of nowhere. But it actually really didn't come out of nowhere any more than the Trump revolution came out of nowhere. It was building for a long time and was allowed to strengthen after the election was stolen to the point where people were finally just absolutely fed up. And anybody surprised by the re-election of Trump was not paying attention. They weren't paying attention to what was really going on, nor were they talking to people. But a lot of people who were surprised Trump won also didn't hear about those people, didn't hear from those people because the news media was too busy running a campaign for Kamala Harris. Similarly, in Canada, the news media there has been running a constant campaign for Pierre Trudeau, and that is over.
That's all fine, but there are real people whose lives are on the line here, and we have a duty to work for them. And quite frankly,
I love this guy in Canada.
This woman doesn't see me as any of us as any kind of savior. They see us all as a last hope. In fact, she doesn't want to be saved. She just wants her life back.
Exactly.
She was taking care of herself just fine before her tax, her heat, her grocery bill went through the roof and her car went missing. She was doing just fine. She was doing everything right. Met another guy at the Le Brat Brewery a few days ago, and you can watch the video of me talking with him.
Good old Labatt's beer. Haven't had one of those in a while.
He walked up to me and he said, I have 3 jobs and I can't make it. We're renting. We have no hope. We've given up on ever owning a home. We're renting. We can barely make it. And he said to me, I feel ashamed when I talk to my kids because they ask me why I'm never around and why we can never have a house. And I feel like a failure. But he didn't fail. He has been failed.
That's right.
He has been robbed of the promise of Canada.
Does this all sound so familiar? Uh, a- and and do you think most Canadians have heard those stories of these individuals? No, there really isn't any real alternative Canadian media. The Canadian broadcasting system and all that kind of stuff, they're all kind of state run monkeys, and they prop up the government of Pierre Trudeau. And so, you heard President Trump and you heard conservatives talking about the real lives of Americans, the real lives of Americans who certainly sounds familiar to the real lives of Canadians here, doesn't it? And then also the crushing of these individuals at the hands of illegal aliens. Canada, not so much. Here in the U.S., very much. But nonetheless, the economy in Canada is terrible. And these stories, this prime minister candidate telling, are all true, but probably many people in Canada are hearing them for the first time.
It was a very simple promise that if you worked hard, you got a good life. Now, it wasn't fancy or extravagant, but you got a house with a yard where you could have kids playing safely. And you could have a nice dog that you could afford to feed along with the kids.
I mean, this is incredible how much this sounds like President Trump and the conservatism that we were talking about people just wanting to be able to live a decent life and the promise of the American dream. Well, guess what? There's a new Canadian dream. And I have no doubt this guy is going to be the next prime minister, if you ask me.
And your kids could play safely in the streets. That was the promise. Now, politicians break promises all the time. But you know what was bad about this promise? This promise didn't belong to this prime minister. It wasn't his promise to break. Yep. It belonged to all of us. And our purpose is to bring home that promise for that young man, that young father, and that older female worker so that they can once again take back control of their lives.
Make Canada great again. That's what's happening. And I have no doubt these folks were watching what was going on in the U.S. They're probably hearing the Canadian broadcasters and Trudeau say, well, Kamala Harris is going to win. There's no way. There's going to be and they watch this happen like, wow, we can do that too. And it looks like they are. So that's the good news coming from the Great White North. This is the Allman Report on NewsTalkSTL. I will take you to Chicago next, where there's a revolt going on even there. And this one is wild. Plus, it looks like one of the ladies of The View might be in a little bit of legal hot water after interfering with an election, as in coaching a witness that was lying and telling myth truths about Donald Trump and January 6th. All that straight ahead on the Allman Report on News Talk STL.
You're listening to the Allman Report on NewsTalkSTL.
Good evening, everyone. Happy Wednesday. This is Common Sense Radio. It's the Allman Report on NewsTalkSTL. Jamie Allman here with you, and pleased and privileged to be here. And so you're on to the revolt in Chicago, and you guys heard about this before the election. And these people, many of these people in the urban areas of Chicago voted for Donald Trump. There was no question about it. And they have turned away from the destructive progressive leadership in the formulation of Mayor Brandon. Go figure. Let's go, Brandon. So the other night, he kicked the public out of this city meeting over because there were people who were criticizing him, Brandon Johnson, over the policy regarding illegal aliens. And on top of that, they got a budget that is completely untenable, not transparent, and also includes money for illegal aliens. So this woman, and I remember telling you about this before the election and saying, you know, this is a pretty good indication that things are not going to go well for Kamala Harris or the Democrat Party in Chicago on November 5th. And those were the people who were wearing the Make America Great Again hats at the city council meeting and even at the Cook County council meeting. And they were chanting, "No blue, no matter who." That's how bad it got for these people. No blue, no matter who. And these are Black Americans, Black Chicagoans who weren't Republican before. Maybe they weren't Democrat before. I don't know. All I know is that they weren't part of the Make America Great Again sphere until the illegal alien problem got so untenable, they started to even formulate groups like Chicago Red. This woman goes on Fox Business and talks about what is happening and the revolt going on, even among Brandon Johnson's progressive supporters.
So his actions are actually making the people who are with him go against him. And it all works out for the good of Chicago Red because our goal is to defund the illegals. So if they don't pass this budget, then the illegals are going to be defunded. And we're going to help Tom Homan do what Agenda 47 put out to do. And that's to make sure that our city is safe once again.
So yeah, that's incredible. But it's happening down in Chicago. These people were the ones who supported President Trump's agenda and fully expect it to be borne out in the city of Chicago in terms of getting rid of these illegal aliens and defunding illegal aliens. You know, there might have been a chance that some of these people who are in Chicago Red might have been defund the police people. You know, you never know. But they suddenly are in an age of enlightenment where a lot of people are. And they're in a situation where they are no longer going to tolerate the leadership of these black left-wingers. And Mayor Johnson, obviously they could probably try to impeach him or recall him, whatever. But Chicagoans have had enough. And, of course, you know what's been going on. They've been beset by the illegals. They've watched the illegals getting better treatment than even they get. They've watched illegals get housing, get stipends, get shelter and food and everything else while the black inner city suffers. And for the life of me, I can't figure out why Mayor Johnson could possibly be on board with this, why he could possibly be, even at this juncture, wanting to maintain the status of Chicago as a sanctuary city. I have no idea why. Unless, of course, we're finally seeing that divide between the Democrat politicians who are recklessly defending clearly destructive ideas and the regular people who maybe even voted Democrat but now are wondering, what's wrong with you? Well, when you're bought and sold by Soros or whatever it happens to be in terms of funding politicians, when you're bought and sold by activists in this manner, then you are going to behave in a manner that perhaps is going to reflect donors as opposed to others. And I'm not quite sure it's really Soros. There's plenty of other people who are really funding these campaigns. And so who knows whether they're doing the bidding of the people who really don't have to care as much about their lives. Illegal aliens don't affect them at the ground level. So that incongruent existence is between the Democrats who are funded by certain people and the regular citizens who are not funded by anybody and are having to live the life and live the misery created by the people who are bought and paid for.
In the city of Chicago, a lot of times people look at this as a move against them busing people here, but we've been dealing with the fallout of the cartel being here for years now. And now we are actually dealing with a drug epidemic amongst our teenagers because they are dying from taking opioids laced with fentanyl, and these are the people who are bringing it in. So it's much deeper than the taxes. We're definitely looking at the safety and security and futures of our children because they're literally poisoning them through the drugs and the diseases that they're spreading through the Chicago public schools.
Sounds like so that's another layer. And that's one that really hasn't been talked about too much, is that the drug cartels, keep in mind, it's a very good business to sell drugs. And as some of the regular domestic gangs start to go away, that's not really as much of a deal. You're seeing the cartels kind of move in to areas that are fertile areas for their drug dealing and everything else. And that's what they're doing. They're coming in. And whereas some of the drug dealing gangs, remember PCP and crack and all that stuff. Well, that's not there anymore. What is there is fentanyl and, of course, the weed. And so the cartels are finding new business in many of these urban areas, which is something that really has not been talked about very much. And not only are the cartels finding new business in these areas, they're a lot scarier than even some of the domestic gangs ever were. And so at that point, because you remember me telling you that in Chicago, some of these gang members in Chicago, I'm talking about domestic gang members, even think, damn, those Venezuelans are crazy. We don't even mess with them. And so that's another reason why the illegal alien train is so prevalent. It's not just to come over here and pick strawberries. There's also a regimented and organized effort on the part of the cartels to come in, bring cartel members to the United States of America so they can continue their drug trade, which is existing in the inner cities by her positioning here, which again is something maybe a lot of you hadn't even heard about. And then you juxtapose that with the rise of the Venezuelan gang. They just made some arrests in Aurora, Colorado, but you're seeing what's been happening there. They're taking over apartment complexes, all that kind of thing. Well, those are drug cartel gangs. Those are gangs that were shipped in here, facilitated their travel here as drug selling units. They are basically, these people are branch managers for their cartel's drug industry, the drug corporation. That's what's happening too. And that's something that inner city people like this woman in Chicago is starting to see. They're like, wow, it's no longer that domestic gang member selling drugs to our kids. It's a cartel member. And then the cartel members at the same time, some of them are recruiting some of the gang members. So they have their own little extension of the branch managerialship through domestic people. So they're running the show, and they've got a bunch of these existing gang members who are absolutely right there and ready to go and ready to be recruited to do the dirty work of the cartels. Really bad stuff all around. And as she points out, it's not just the caravans of busloads of people coming in looking for jobs. It's the actual regimented installation of cartel members who are taking over the drug trade in the inner city. So it's a pretty big deal. And I'm so glad to see these people who say, we're ready for Tom Homan to show up. We're ready for him. The times they are changing. This is the Allman Report on NewsTalkSTL.
You're listening to the Allman Report on NewsTalkSTL.
This is the Allman Report on NewsTalkSTL. Happy Wednesday evening to all of you and yours. Well, so it's great that St. Louis winds up on the top 10 most dangerous cities list in America based on FBI statistics. These people with Express US, this organization, have decided they were going to do the top 10 list. And St. Louis is the number one most dangerous city in America, according to this list. Now, Ethan Valencia, when you hear that St. Louis is the most dangerous city in the United States, what do you think?
Man, and it always is, right?
Yes.
I mean, it's always been that way. And I'm guessing that the reason it turns out like that has to do with they're picking only the city and not the suburbs.
Yeah, it's only the city.
And that's just not really what St. Louis life is like for most of us.
No, it's not. And so what you get is people from out of town or your relatives from out of town or whatever, they see this or tourists see it or whatever, and they're like, damn, St. Louis is the most dangerous city in the world, in the United States? And of course, totally wrong. Your instincts there, Ethan, are totally right. Unfortunately, St. Louis has a status, which is why I really wish we could come up with some kind of solution to this. I'm not really opposed to a merger. I was opposed to the merger that the Better Together people wanted because that was just not right. Tried to shove that down our throats. But we're only Baltimore is the other city that isn't a county seat. And so, and you guys already know this, so forgive me if I'm kind of, telling you something you already know, but the city of St. Louis, the only reason why it's an autonomous city, so it's not connected to a county. So in most places, like for instance, Kansas City is the county seat of Jackson County, and that's how it works in Kansas City. And name any other city, whatever the major city, they're the county seat of a county. St. Louis is not the county seat of a county. St. Louis is the city of St. Louis. This, of course, comes after an antiquated, outdated, post-Reconstruction era vision by these city leaders that they didn't want the riffraff from the county coming into the city. They didn't want all those rural people, all those other people. They wanted to create an atmosphere where they were just simply one autonomous city, and that was it, insulated by anybody else, and they basically just created this kind of privacy that they wanted post-Reconstruction era. Why other cities didn't do that, I don't know. They saw the benefits of it, what have you. I mean, the city of St. Louis made a lot of mistakes early in the day when they said, well, come on, we have the Mississippi River. Who needs railroads? I'm like, well, you're missing out. And guess who took over the centerpiece of the railroad industry in the United States? It was Chicago. St. Louis actually was pretty much right there and could have established itself, because Union Station, everything else, could have established itself as a railroad hub and trading hub for the United States. It would have been amazing. But instead, they said, well, we got barges and riverboats. That's our commerce, is everything's going to float along the river. It's like, that's fine, but you're ceding the railroad dominance to Chicago now, when actually St. Louis should have been the number one railroad hub in the Midwest, but it wasn't. Then they call it the gateway to the Midwest, the gateway to the West. I'm thinking, well, Chicago is probably more of the gateway to the West than we are at that point, because of our abdication of a great industry. So anyway, fast forward to now, and the city of St. Louis has all of about 300,000 people living in it, if that, maybe 280,000 people. I don't know the exact population. So every time you're doing crime stats based on per 100,000 people, oh my goodness. If you're only basing it on per 100,000 people and you're a city of 300,000 people, you're automatically going to see a higher rate of crime than you would if you're doing the crime rate based on 100,000 people and your population is 3.2 million or 2.1 million or whatever. Imagine the change that would be taking place and where we would sit now if St. Louis, the city, were part of St. Louis County, and every time you did a stat per 100,000, you'd be basing it probably on about 2.5 million people, 100,000 per 2.5 million people. And your stats go way down as a rate anyway. And believe me, I'm not good at math, but I know enough about the stats to know about that. So St. Louis always winds up on these measures, and it doesn't tell the real story of St. Louis and the damage this kind of thing causes, because these people who regurgitate these stats never tell you that. It's never in a context. And I know St. Louis does have a crime problem. I don't think there's any doubt about that. And I think, per 300,000 people, when you have that many murders or violent crimes or whatever, that's still pretty bad. But it doesn't tell the whole story when you are basically defining an entire metro area. Because people from St. Charles will sometimes say they're from St. Louis. Like, for instance, when you're on vacation or whatever, and let's say you're from High Ridge, Missouri, you don't generally tell people I'm from High Ridge, Missouri. You tell them you're from St. Louis. Right, Ethan? I mean, generally you're like,
exactly.
Like
People in Chicago do it too. They just say Chicago, even though there's a million suburbs that they could have specified. But
yeah, I mean, I grew up in U City, and yet when people ask you where'd you grow up, I grew up in St. Louis. Because who aren't familiar with U City or whatever, I grew up in St. Louis, and so what happens is St. Louis does become like a bigger thing in the context of a list where you're describing it as the number one most dangerous city in the United States. I mean, that in the minds of people on the outside of St. Louis and the outside of the state or whatever encompasses everything. St. Charles, even Wentzville, Jefferson County, anything in North County, whatever. Even the Metro East. I mean, some people who are from, Cahokia say they're from St. Louis. But anyway, it has this portrait, and it really is damaging when it comes to investments, when it comes to tourism for sure. And, conventions and things like that, when it comes to a corporation deciding where it's going to put its headquarters, all those things really matter. And I think we're losing a lot by not having a merger. I understand all of the trepidation about it, all the caution about it. I get that. I just wish that we could figure out a way to do it, because I think it would help St. Louis and the region quite a bit if we had a much more deeper story about the truth about St. Louis and what it's all about and what it encompasses. So that's my take on the number one status. Did you see this? So this is an MSNBC host. Her name is Stephanie Rule, and she hates Donald Trump. She's a never Trumper on MSNBC. And so one of her fellow Democrats did a little interview with her, and it was a casual discussion, but in a lot of what she said was a very interesting type of introspection on the differences between Kamala Harris and Donald Trump. And now, if you had to guess, who do you think would be more accessible to an MSNBC host calling them? You think it would be Kamala Harris, right? Well, and believe me, a lot of us, even some of us in conservative radio, whatever, have noticed that some people, like, are even in our own realm, are less accessible than other people who are not in our realm. It's kind of a weird thing, but it does happen. So she tells the story of actually calling Trump on the phone. So she had his number, which I guess is impressive. Listen to this.
Donald Trump had that crazy rally at Madison Square Garden.
Oh, wow, yeah.
I rolled the dice, and I called him on the phone. And he answered!
Of course he did! Of course!
I don't know who this guy is, but he's pretty obnoxious. But of course he did! But yeah. But it's not, of course he did. That's pretty surprising that Donald Trump would just pick up a phone. How'd you get his number, by the way? Dang, girl.
What he said.
And I wasn't calling to chit-chat. I said, Mr. President, this is Stephanie Rule. You made a lot of comments last night, blah, 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 blah. And it was not an on-the-record conversation. Long story, so I'm not going to get into what he said, but I called for one reason. I said, you just said a whole bunch of public things. I'd like to sit down for an interview with you. We got 5 days before the election. So we didn't get into anything. There's nothing for me to report. I called him and said, I want an interview with you. Obviously, he said no. But my point is, I was able to get to him by dialing his phone. Right. Now, that might be completely ape shit, and you're like, I can't believe people know this guy's phone number. Yeah. But the reverse of that, if I were to want to connect with VP Harris or President Biden, there's 50 people between me and that. I could write a note that maybe could get to somebody, then through Pony Express and a pigeon, something might end up in a mailbox near them. And I called DJT to say, yo, can I have an interview? He told me to go fuck myself, but I still was able to connect with him. Yeah.
But he still picked up.
I mean, pretty amazing. And it's one of those situations where you're in a situation where I don't know why people have to. I mean, I don't know why. And, you know, Ethan, it's so hard sometimes to do this stuff. Like, you know, you try to play videos or you do things like this. And I don't know why it's necessary for everybody to cuss. Like you get like when they do their some people who are doing a situation where you are even like a normal intelligent guy doing a TikTok video has to cuss in it. That's why half the time they don't get played on radio or whatever, but they have to cuss all the time.
It hurts their ability to be played, because they can't. Yeah, they and it gets them censored on the platforms too. It makes their videos not show up in people's feeds. It's better if they just don't do it.
Yeah, and we got to bleep it out. I get it, but it's like, why? And you're an MSNBC. I mean, you don't need to. And I think a lot of people think that when they cuss, it kind of makes them cool and natural to other people in the audience. I don't understand why that is. But anyway, to my point, and to Stephanie's Rule's point, the reality is that she was saying, if I called Kamala Harris, I could never get in touch with anybody because they're all so insulated. You got to go through all these different people, and you got to go through everything else. And, you know, you're and I just I just called Donald Trump. He picked up the phone. And I'm actually surprised, but probably Donald Trump picked up the phone because he wanted to tell her that he was not going to do an interview. So maybe it was probably a situation where he was like, no, I want to take this call because I want to tell her no. That's, that sounds like a move that Donald Trump would make. But still, a lesson in, I think probably there are a lot of people out there who couldn't figure out why Kamala Harris didn't want to do an interview with them. And I can figure out why Kamala Harris didn't want to do an interview with them because she couldn't navigate interviews like a normal, average, everyday person. It became almost impossible for her to come across as intelligent or actually have any real policy ideas or anything else. So, yeah, it's no wonder she's being evasive. But that was the mark of Stephanie Rule, who I still can't figure out how she got his number. I'll have to ask her for his number and see if she'll give it to me. That's how we'll do that. All right, people, I hope you have a wonderful rest of your evening. Don't forget, Portrait of Patriot up on Facebook shortly. This is the Allman Report. Thank you, Ethan. Take care.